blueprints and behaviors, how they've deviated from their source code, and basically how experiences through life associated through my disjointed learning theory method then piece together how you come from obviously being born to how you're conditioned to how you grow up and how you enact and come up with patterns, habits, behaviors, and you live these throughout your life in order to work out who you are and therefore go back to the source code, which is ultimately the self. So I help people with all sorts of problems, health, wealth, relationships, physical ailments, and basically founders and business people who have issues or blocks with progressing and moving forward with certainty. So lots there, but all fun and games. We like a bit of variety.
So basically everything.
Yep,
Yeah,
basically all in one.
all of it.
Come to me for anything, and I can not give you a coping mechanism, not give you a
Hmm.
survival adaptation, and give you a way of breaking free from all of it.
Hmm.
So yeah, in a nutshell.
And then events, you'd be open to doing like live events, being like guest speaker and all that kind of business as
Yeah, we
well,
can do
wouldn't
that
you?
stuff.
Anything commercial,
All good.
out for being
I can
flown
speak. I can
around
speak.
the
I can speak
world
for
to
Britain.
speak.
Yeah, it would be nice. But yeah, this stuff needs to hit the mainstream. So
Yeah.
it's a case of going away from all the traditional therapies and methods and mental health problems and all the other sort of stuff that's going on in the world and actually getting back to who are we and how do we show up in our sort of true authentic form and then have that expression that can then go back out there and make a difference in other people's lives because ultimately
Yeah.
your mess becomes your message.
Uh-huh.
So we're looking to clear those
Because
messes.
then there's, yeah, there's, I mean, there's illness and then there's trauma and then there's just everyday people who are trying to be their best. I mean, there's a massive kind of
Hmm.
spectrum of people, isn't there, that you can help.
Yep. Yeah.
Me too. And then there's the world we live in, isn't there? And the moment that we're at now, which is coming up to 11/11.
Yep.
So what's
Always fun.
your take on the 11/11?
Well, I'm a master 11 number,
Yeah.
so obviously if you add up the
I
the
was born on the 11th as well, you know.
shocker. But with
What's
this
Master 11 mean?
specifically, so it's basically you're here to be more spiritually sort of mentoring people.
Okay.
So like a 22 would be like a builder. A master 33 is like a teacher, but sort of an 11 is more spiritually minded and unity consciousness. So
Okay.
we're operating in that type of field. But obviously, when we look at master 11, your main numbers are obviously the entire date of birth. So
Well, I'm
obviously with
11.
my
I'm born the 11th, 11/08, 70.
yeah,
We shouldn't say
so so you can be in a master 11 if you're on the day,
Also,
but
8 is a good one as well, isn't it?
yeah, but we're talking the collective numbers of all of your dates of birth. So this is going
Okay.
more into numerology, but it kind of gives you your life path number.
Okay.
So whereas you have like the day of the month is sort of partial, it will give you clues as to what experiences you'll have. So like obviously with the podcast, you bring people together. So that would be like the
Mhm.
11. It'd be the one and the
Okay.
one is the two, which joins that type of thing. So
So 2
you've
and a
got
6?
two and a
And a
six
6?
being an eight.
Oh, yeah, yeah, being an 8.
So you've got like a continuous loop or an infinity, and then
Yeah.
you've got money, abundance, and things along those lines. So you have little components that then build up the whole. So my life path number is obviously an 11, and then sort of my name itself has a code to it, and
Oh,
that
yeah.
in itself will then underlying each letter will have certain elements that then fold into my life experiences as I go through life.
So is there a
So like
number
it
for
might
each
be
letter? Is it the number of the alphabet? Or
um
what number it is on the alphabet?
no, it
No.
it doesn't it goes back to like the Hebrew numbering system. So
Okay.
you predominantly have up to like number 22 and then everything falls into that. So you might have like CH for Chris is one number, but C sits on its own and H also sits on its own, but then it has a different combined number that isn't the sum of those two individual numbers.
It's also
So it's
Christ.
looking, yeah, so it's looking back at consciousness from that perspective. So Christ consciousness, or the
Yeah.
return of Christ, is the rising of the consciousness rather than the physical human person that we believe from obviously the Bible and that construct. So when we have a look at obviously pulling these things together, you can look at it from any number of angles. You can look at it from like your star sign when you're born, the placements of all the planets at birth. You can look at numerology. You can look at how your name constructs. You can look at your soul plan, your soul blueprint from all of these numbers. You've then got the date of birth.
Do you have to
So
believe in
like,
space for that then?
no.
No.
So
So
if
where
it
are
the
the planets to the side then, if you're not believing in space?
so
Where
the
are they
easiest way to
halogens?
The easiest way to look at it is space doesn't exist in the format that you understand it to be in.
Okay.
So what we're looking at is if you have a look at the flat Earth concept,
Hmm.
outer space is the space outside of obviously where we are. So
Hmm.
it's not up, it's out.
Hmm.
So at some point you have to go out of the container that is what we understand to be Earth, and then you go into the outer realms, and that will be other lands of some kind, I would expect. So if anything was to ever come and visit us, it would come from sideways, not upwards. And then what you do
What
is
do you think about spaceships? Because they kind of go sideways, don't they?
you couple that with the fact of obviously spaceships can't go beyond what is the firmament or the dome,
Which is why they go
right? Yeah. And then you stack that with the other concept, which is if it's a solar system, solar being light, what if
Yeah.
it was actually a soul system?
Yes.
And we were just told it's a solar system, but as a soul, you are light and you are therefore spirit. So
Mm.
what you're looking at is you're looking at a solar system, and the solar system is governed by what we refer to as planets.
Hmm.
So like Saturn is predominantly like the masculine, the male, or father issues. So if that comes into a certain part of your planetary alignment,
Hmm.
then ultimately you'll go through lessons and you'll go through learning that are based around the father figure and that masculine sort of construct. So it's not so much that it's all outside of us and it's the universe, it's the you as in YOU, as in
Hmm.
you as the individual universe. So what you're doing is everything exists within you and therefore without you. So what's inside is then projected outwardly, but the planets and the alignment and the moon and the stars and the sun all have an impact on your body and your life lessons, your life learning as you go through certain spells or periods of time or cycles of time or basically miniature kind of fragments of time whereby you're learning lessons and you're having experiences to further find out more about self. So it then becomes less about all spaceships and flying into space and landing on the moon. Rather, how do all these elements within the self interact? Because ultimately, all we're doing is we're spiritual or eternal spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. But as this character or this avatar, we have a soul system
Hmm.
which operates around us. So, when somebody says, oh, the world doesn't revolve around you, well, technically it does,
Yeah, that's
but not in the way that we kind of are taught it and therefore understand it.
the moon still
So,
moves around. You don't believe in the moon landings, do you?
so no, it's clearly staged.
No.
So if we can send a tin can to the moon and
Hmm.
it not get destroyed, then why would the current technology we have now, can we not go back?
Hmm. Exactly.
It makes no sense. Plus, if you're going to phone, like with the cables, it's
Plus,
like
in the pictures, yeah, they're just you can see that it's
yeah,
constructed. Yeah.
but cables and phones and electronics do not operate through satellites. They operate through cables that go under the ground on a flat Earth.
Hmm.
So it's why, like, the bottom of Africa and the bottom of South America, they've got no cables attached to them.
Hmm.
Because if you look at it on a flat Earth map, they are literally the opposite sides of the map. So
Hmm.
you can't run a cable unless you run through all these other lands.
Hmm.
And then it's why it's a ground positioning satellite, GPS, not a
Hmm.
global positioning satellite,
Hmm.
which is what we're told it is, which is obviously if you go up in the air, obviously everything is then satellite beamed in around us. So these constructs are just designed to keep us kind of stuck rather than knowing exactly what's
Mhm.
designed to obviously uplift us and provide that growth and that development that we need in order to come home to
Takes a
self and
while
therefore
to get
work
your
out
head
how,
around it all, doesn't it?
yeah,
And to kind of
yeah.
recondition yourself or to, wake
But
up.
when you know enough about everything, you realize everything is interwoven into everything else.
Hmm.
But when you only know fragments or samples of things, like it's all disconnected. So you'd know enough to know enough, but you don't know enough to know that you don't know enough. And then that's where the problem comes because then it creates a gap. And then within that gap, you have to fill that gap with stuff that makes more sense. But then the problem is we're fed all of this information to make sense of things, but ultimately it's just
Doesn't make
one
any
big
sense.
lie wrapped up in a nice little frilly bow. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a deep rabbit hole.
Yeah. It's
But yeah,
great.
going back to your point of obviously 1111. So
Yeah.
as a Master 11, it's usually quite a turning point for obviously Master 11s because it's the 1111 portal. But if you are an 11, the energy is magnified and therefore stronger because you're going into different phases of life. So when we go into different phases of life, you'll have endings and conclusions, but then you'll also have the fresh openings and the beginnings. But you'll find a lot falls away, but yet not a lot is obviously visible for you to move forward into because you're in the process of kind of transitioning from that between worlds phase of what's gone in the past and what's fading away to, well, hold on, the stuff is phasing itself in for you then to have that next chapter or that next cycle or that next phase and period. But then, like in my case, I've got a 9 year cycle that's just ending
Mhm.
around the 1111
Right.
because of all of my endings and structures. But then I've had mini cycles within all of that. So I'm going out of a 9 year phase whereby obviously my body decided that actually structure would have to fade away and fall away because my consciousness was evolving. Then my experiences around that and anything that couldn't come with me had to then be developed and sort of micromanaged over the last 9 years. And that's been an up and down cycle from jobs to people to relationships to sort of my own sort of levels of consciousness that are then developing and evolving to coming to a conclusion around now. And then it usually does it in like a 3, 6, 9, or a 12-month cycle. So obviously, once you get back to 12, then the one and the two come back to a 3 month cycle, but on a larger scale.
Hmm.
And then what you're doing is you're building these 3, 6, 9 cycles, and that's where like Tesla and his 3, 6, 9 theory come in, because everything is built around these kind of structures. Like
Right.
you have the 3D, then you have the six, which is more of a spiritual aspect, but then you have nines, which is like endings and conclusions.
Right.
So you have that mini structure, and then all of your lessons are built into the ones, the twos, the fours, the fives, the sevens, the eights. And then each one of those numbers in turn can have a monthly cycle for you, but then it can have a yearly cycle for you.
Mhm.
And then it depends on your soul chart as to how those cycles then interact with each other to then give you what your lessons are during that time. But what we don't realize, and like this is where tarot and numerology and astrology sort of come into it, like you have to combine them rather than looking at them individually because you're going to get a bigger picture perspective or more of a soul plan perspective if you do so. And then that should give you enough information so that you can start going, oh, I can see now why this is happening in my life, or I can see why this is coming back into my life, or why another phase of this is here, or why this has changed form. And then this is on a higher level um, sort of end. But most of this comes after doing all of the internal work, which is actually going, well, hold on a basic level. I've come in, I've been conditioned, I've got these patterns, habits, and behaviors. My mental constructs are, or mental blocks are all over the place. Have I learnt things the correct way round? Have I learnt them backwards? How have I then built structures on top of those structures over the years? So therefore, there's multiple structures and ways of looking at things to
Mhm.
then go back to, well, hold on, I need to take these all down because I'm not creating the life that I want. I'm not living the life that I want. I'm not in alignment with who I am. I've still got these stories from somebody that once told me that, I don't know, I'd never make it unless I did X, Y, and Z by this point in time. And I still live to that story, which is why there's now a block.
You know how to
And
go back and unblock yourself, don't you?
yeah, so you basically have to go through all of this stuff and clear it out. But when you are the thing, and this was one of my biggest sort of takeaways, it's like if I was to ever hide something, where would I hide it? And the answer that I eventually concluded is I'd hide it in plain sight. Therefore, I would be the thing that was ultimately the problem. And that was the shift for me that was like, well, hold on, if everything exists in my head, and I'm creating from what's in my head, then surely that gives me the control as long as I start working out what's in my head,
Yeah.
right? Other than that, if you don't bring it to your awareness,
Mm.
it basically governs your life and you call it fate.
Right.
And yet it could have been something you were told at the age of 3
Hmm.
that stuck with you, that was absorbed
The
from that
three-year-old made a decision.
sponge, yeah,
Yeah.
from that sponge phase whereby you don't have the ability to filter good or bad or right or wrong. It's just that everything is assumed to be correct until the age of 7 or 8, where your subconscious mind then comes in
Mm.
and starts going, well, hold on, we can't allow this new conscious set of thoughts to come in because we've now got a gatekeeper at age 8. So consciously, we can try and override the subconscious, but we have to do it through repetition. But more often than not, we're just looking to reinforce the beliefs that we've already got instilled, and yet you could go 10, 15, 20, 30 years still living by these original beliefs that may or
And
may not have worked for someone, but they no longer work for you.
and it can also happen later in life as well. You can have these things in your head as well, past the age of 7.
Yeah,
So, for
so
example,
whatever's
something
in there
happened
from
to
7.
you, to you,
Yep.
when you were like, 16 or 18, whatever, you can still go back to that and solve that and change
Yeah.
that decision you made about yourself.
So they're the
Get rid of it.
stepping stones that are the early ins to the
Mm,
fact of there's something that's not quite aligned. So you'll have the experiences usually in 7 year cycles. And what there'll be something that ties you back to that first 7 year cycle. But you might find that you're living in subsequent 7 year cycles,
mhm.
different changes of form or different perspectives or different angles of the same problem. And then you'll keep repeating these patterns and behaviors until you start going back through them to work out why they exist in the first place.
And do you think it's all mapped out?
I think, and
Well, you
this is me
say the
not
universe is in control or whatever, it's all
this
meant to happen, blah blah blah. But and then you have a
this
dream, or
this
you've
is me
had a
not
dream, or
fully
you have
knowing.
a deja vu, and then you remember a dream that you definitely had, and that's happened years later. Then it must be mapped out.
Well, this is me not fully knowing because I
Mm.
don't think you can ever fully know. But we have free will, so we have the ability to make choices. But that is beyond the traumas, the conditionings, the patterns, the habits, and behaviors. So technically, in order to have free will, you have to do some of the healing work first, because otherwise you're just running the programs.
Mhm.
And if you're running the programs, then you're constantly repeating the habits, the actions, the thoughts, the feelings.
Or the
Therefore, you
pathways, the
could,
neural pathways.
yeah,
So you need rewiring, basically.
therefore you could argue that you are not a human being at that point, you are a robot.
Mm.
So if you're a robot, then you would expect at that point that everything is predetermined because you're running a program or a set of programs.
Some
So
of the things
only
do you think there are robots?
so so only at the point of you doing the healing work do you step into the fact of you can potentially step out of it being pre-planned. Because you have to think, if you're pre-planning something, it has to run like clockwork. It has to run automatically. It has to run on autopilot. That doesn't involve critical thinking. That just involves programming. So if you've been programmed in condition 0 to 7, then you will live the rest of your life based on that 0 to 7, unless you go back and reprogram it. And therefore you open up your option of free will, which is to go against the programming. And if
Mhm.
you go against the programming, then it doesn't become pre-planned. So you could argue that like somebody will awaken at, I don't know, age 30, but they will be living the program of 0 to 7 up until the age of 30. Then they'll spend from 30 going, well, hold on, how do I get myself out of the program? Only at that point can you start to then change what you technically would class as predetermined. And that's how I would look at it. But you'll have people that are never designed to wake up. So they could just be non-player characters or just be programmed to function so that you've got like backdrop people
Hmm.
so that you're not
So
literally on your own.
uh, so if you're your authentic self and you're cutting up off the layers, you're supposed to be cutting off the layers or conditioning, whatever, to get
Yep.
back to the original self
Mhm.
that you were meant to be, whatever.
Yep.
How about that? Is
Well,
that
that's what so you have to look whenever you come in from like being a baby, you're
Mhm.
not conditioned until the point of you start having experiences. A baby doesn't come in and go, "Oh my God, I'm trapped, I'm slave, like enslaved, and I've got to follow these instructions, these orders." They're free spirits. The conditioning comes from the fact of you then have to rely and you're dependent upon somebody outside of you to do everything for you. Then you learn basically self-helplessness because it's like somebody outside of you has to provide everything for you. So everybody technically would have that as an early level sort of
or
preconditioned.
trauma if they're
Yeah.
abused? Yeah.
And then you layer that with trauma, like you're saying, and then you've got self-helplessness, but then you've got trauma on top of it that then reinforces that. And then you're starting to build these structures out that people then have to spend years trying to get out of or spend the
Mhm.
rest of their life living. And this is where the solar system comes in and how you have spiritual growth and development, because you have to go through all of these life lessons and learnings, unpick them, and go, well, actually, if I hadn't been exposed to this and if I didn't have this experience, then who would I be without that experience? Because ultimately, our past isn't what happened, as much as that sounds weird. Our past is the story we tell about what happened. So usually when you tell stories, you don't remember all of the events. You've also got your nervous system kicking off, firing and wiring and doing all sorts of random stuff. You're never in a position to logically look at it because you've got heightened emotion. So the story you tell becomes your past rather than the neutral event of the past just being told as if it just happened.
Mhm.
And usually this is where mental health problems come in, mental blocks come in,
Mhm.
because what you're doing is you're having to go back and you're technically going to have to rewrite the past, but from a perspective of understanding exactly what happened, why it happened, and the truth of what happened, which is universal. And only at that point can you break away from it. Because otherwise, if you don't have the understanding of why you were subjected to that event in the first place, or what your lesson or your learning or your takeaway from was it, then like what are we doing? Because we're just having experiences and we're not learning or developing from them.
Mhm.
We're just having the experience and then going, well, oh, it now defines who I am as an individual. But it doesn't when you take your power back. And this is what we need to have more of because it's like the whole point of the mental health crisis and stuff that we've seen over previous years is because we're not taught these things. And what's then happening is you've got these voices in your head that are arguing, going back and forward over the whole, well, if I'm saying this one thing, but I want to do this other thing, and actually I should be doing that thing because that's more aligned with what I'm doing, then you wonder why people have identity breakdowns and crisis and all this other
But
stuff
it's also
comes
the
to the
food and
forefront.
all the crap, isn't it?
Yeah.
All the
But
processed food and the sugar, because actually that's, your gut's connected to your brain and your brain is fine if it's fed properly. And also the
but
medicine.
yeah, we're looking at the body wants to heal. That's all it wants to do.
Yeah,
Yet the
with
body
food,
keeps the score.
with natural.
So if we're eating all the time, if we're putting substances into our body that we're not getting nutrient from
Mhm.
all the time, then all we're doing is we're just using energy on nothing.
Dis-ease,
And
yeah.
therefore that energy could be used for regenerating cells. That
Mhm.
energy could be used to healing parts of the body. That energy could be used for detoxifying. And all of these other things that come from like fasting and things along those lines, they allow the body the platform to do these type of activities. Whereas when we're constantly eating all the
That's it.
time,
Eating is not natural.
then
Eating through water
exactly.
isn't.
Yeah. And we've just had this as a construct which we've just followed, and somebody said this is what you do, and then somebody marketed it, and then somebody
Mm.
charged for it, and then we have a cost crisis or cost of living crisis because all of these things go through the roof, and then there's inflation, and there's all these other things.
Hmm.
But they each have a place in terms of the grand scheme of things and the learning and the development of each individual soul or person. But we have to start unpicking why do they exist and why are we experiencing them? Because we need to take the lesson. And then the sooner we take the lesson, the sooner we can move out of it and move away from it and start creating differently in the first place. And that's what the hardest part is because the awareness and knowing that you have a problem and knowing that there's a solution to the problem isn't widely available. And that's where all of this new stuff that obviously I've come up with
Hmm.
sort of comes in because it's not like
Like the plant
sit
paradox
with
with all, that book with all about the food and everything. It's
yeah,
sort of an eye-opener.
but it's not like oh come to I don't know what is it at the minute like better help and be like oh yeah I've been with this therapist for 3 years. With all due respect, if you're with a therapist for 3 years, what are they doing?
Well, that doesn't work, does it? Yeah.
Like it doesn't work. Like but my premise with also due respect is the
Hmm.
sooner I can get you in and get rid of you, the better your life's going to be.
Hmm.
Right? Which is why all of my stuff is cut down and like you're basically buying your time back and you're buying elements of my time
Hmm.
in order to buy your time back. So I think there was a film out years and years ago called I think it was Time. It had like Justin Timberlake in it.
Oh, yeah.
And what they used to do is they used to pay by time, not by money. So
Oh.
if you were going into like the higher districts or you had more um, wealth, it was based on how much time you had left. So obviously the workers would clock in and be paid a certain amount of time so that they could literally just work for a week. And then they get paid at the end of the week to go and work for the week, which is sort of a macro scale and a
Hmm.
micro scale of basically what we're experiencing now.
Hmm.
But we don't look at time as a currency, we look at money as the currency, whereas time is the energy that
Time is
allows
value,
us to
isn't it?
then do things. Exactly. So you're never going to get your time back.
No.
And that's your most valuable asset. And that's
Mhm.
where the switch has to happen, whereby we're going, well, hold on, how do I save myself time?
Mm. So when you say 1111 portal, is
Yep.
I mean, is there a place? It's not a place, but how do you explain where the portal is? Does it
So
have
what
a
it's 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 difficult to explain because I
Mhm.
don't think it actually exists in real portal terms. But
Mhm.
as with like a mirror, you could argue that's a portal. As with a door, you could argue that's a portal. If
Mhm.
you wanted I don't know, like an end screen or a loading screen or a portal, you could board an aeroplane,
Mhm.
right? So
It's
you've
just
got
where
different
time
ways.
aligns or something like that, and then
Yeah,
it's
you've
in
basically just
time
got
rather than in.
jumps. Yeah, you've got jumps or periods that align. It's like 111 or
Mhm.
1111. It's like it's just a window of time
It
whereby
gives you
things
access
can
to.
change
Yeah.
and you can jump from different aspects or you can endings and conclusions things.
Right. Okay.
But obviously, like you've got the 1010 portal, but it'll be more specific for 10 life path numbers, but you can't have a 10 life path number. It'll be a one life path number. So you then have like the ones would then be like October and November are basically two sets of aligned portals for them
Mhm.
that may or may not magnify their ability to heal or deal with their sort of life lessons and problems. Or it might just be like a condensed period of time where everything speeds up. So you can get
So a
more
portal
done
to
in that
move in
period of
time
time.
to a different time
Yeah.
would be, I don't know.
So I think it's just a construct really that has been put in so that the logical analytical part of the brain can sort of go, well, hold on, this would explain why this is happening.
Hmm.
So in terms of numerology, if you look at binary code, zeros and ones,
Hmm.
everything has a system or a structure behind it. So each of these potential portals would potentially have binary numeric coding behind it, which will then kind of magnify or sort of expand the ability for you to play around with your coding or your DNA or your
Mhm.
structures or your lessons or your consciousness or whatever that looks like for you at whatever the time is. So I think these things are just they're put there because of the alignment of the numbers, but the alignment of the numbers is obviously like a cheat code or a shortcut code or a completion code
A
or some
glitch.
sort of coding to some larger like simulation or computer system is
Mhm.
what I
Mhm.
would expect.
Mhm.
Because
And
otherwise,
Master 11, how do you know that you're on a Master 11? Do you have a certificate?
no, you just add up the digits of your date of birth. So
Okay, and that
mine's
makes you a Master 11. And then
so mine's
you are like a spiritual kind of person.
well, all of my stuff is spiritually based, higher
Yeah.
wisdom, knowledge, and learning, so it fits. But then I'm a Pisces as well, which is governed
Hmm.
by like Neptune,
Hmm.
obviously going back to the planets, not planets. But
Hmm.
that's more airy fairy, spiritual, woo-woo type. But ultimately, we're all spiritual beings living a human experience. So therefore, it's not woo-woo, it's just a differing
The way
sort of
it is.
perspective to like science
An awareness.
or religion or whatever you want to look at it as.
Yeah.
It's just a classification or a label at the end of the day.
Yeah. All right.
So you basically just add up your digits of your birth and it will give you a total number. Obviously, if it's above sort of a certain number, then you need to minimize it unless it's an 11, a 22, or a 33. So you can go up to what would it be? 9. Then you've got 11, 22, and 33. So if you add up the digits of your date of birth, so mine's 2003 1986, that
Yeah.
adds up. So you got the
Mine
2
bloody
and the
well
6
makes
is 5.
26.
So you got an 8 then. So you should be all right.
26 again. I don't
Yeah, but
believe it.
you have to simplify it. So the 2 and the 6 is an 8.
Yeah. But that's weird, isn't it?
You can have the same number in multiple positions because you'll have experiences around that type of thing.
The 26 is just follows me everywhere. It's just
Yeah.
maybe I just noticed it.
Well, obviously the podcast, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's why
And
I said
next year.
that.
Next year should be your year.
Well, yeah, it will be.
Yeah, so mine's like 2003 1986. So I got the 2 and the 3 is
Right.
5, plus the 1 is 6, the 9 is
Yeah.
15, then the 8 is 23, and then the 6 is 29, but the 2
Hmm.
and the 9 is then an 11.
All right. Okay.
So obviously I have 2, 9, which is sort of the unity and the
Yeah.
endings of cycles, but then obviously it's the 1, 1, which is leadership, and then you've got the 1, 1 as a 2, which is then like unity and consciousness and bringing things together.
And if you
So
have 999, like in your phone number,
yeah.
would it be the
You mean
same
like
as
I do?
666? Just the other way around. Is there any difference? Are you allowed to just turn it around and make it just six?
No, you can't do that. Nines are nines and sixes are sixes.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, but like you say, it's like even things like your phone number, they
Yeah.
will have a
Mine's 828. Yeah.
frequency. They will have a frequency based on
Really?
like your total number, but then the individual digits of that number. But I've got 999, but technically I'm emergency services. When your mental health
And
gets that bad and you have
I
an
noticed
identity
that and I was a
crisis.
bit freaked out. I was like, oh, that's really 666
Yeah.
when you first came.
Well, the passcode to this meeting today had
It did have,
686
yes, I
and
did
then three
notice that.
sixes. So yeah, there were what 5 out of the 6 digits were 6.
I'll get my calculator. I'm not having all that. Okay, so should we talk about
I think it's a
what am I
38, so it wasn't
more or
11.
less on there? Sorry?
If you got the 5 lots of the 6 is 30, plus the
Mm-hmm.
8 is 38, but the 3 and the 8 is an 11. Dun, dun,
Oh, double seven three
dun.
nine. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
I wouldn't give that away.
I've done the date of birth. I mean, it will, of course, it's going to get popular.
Yeah,
No one's watching at the moment, but it will do.
well, there's people watching. the amount of times I get like three
No, I
likes
can see how many times
on
it's been played
Instagram. Yeah,
on Spotify,
yeah.
like about three.
Well, to be fair,
Or on
you're
YouTube.
only, what are
I
you?
haven't
You're only
really put
about
it out
4 weeks
anywhere
in. Yeah.
I haven't really launched yet. Just it's
Well, you're
just kind of
technically four
material at
weeks
the
in.
moment.
Is it 4 or 5 weeks now?
This is the fourth week, but I did have one other one
Yeah,
with Cara
yeah,
Blackmore, which is also a spiritually kind of ghosty one.
yeah.
Um,
I think I
but
saw
yeah,
the
we could
snippet of it that you
talk about
put
all
out.
sorts of stuff.
Yeah. But you're only
Um,
4 weeks in. We can't
yeah,
expect
exactly.
huge numbers just yet.
They haven't even launched properly.
Well, it's not
No,
26 yet, is it?
it's just sorry.
Next year.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Next year's your year.
exactly. It's going to start next year.
Yeah.
What about your severed arm? You can talk about your severed arm situation.
Oh, yeah, that thing.
So, so
That's
John's
weird.
arm,
Right.
his arm and his shoulder came apart when he was on the track because
Yeah.
he came off at 40 kilometers an hour. So he had to have them wired. Well, he's not sure if it's
Ooh.
wire or whether it's got a like a plate in there.
Yeah.
Like an operation to put his arm back. And he went
Yeah.
today and he didn't know what was under there, but he's got staples instead of stitches, metal
So
staples.
he doesn't know
Got
what they've
this
done.
great scar.
Yeah.
Terrible. But yeah, no, but it's actually the right arm. Like
Right.
you were saying, your right arm was severed
Yeah.
in a
So
past life.
obviously not in this lifetime,
Yeah, so
luckily.
how do you know about
But
that?
well, it's I had it a few years back, whereby obviously my ulnar, I think it's the ulnar nerve. It's around the elbow. Yeah, it must be the ulnar nerve. So
Right?
that nerve on the elbow
Mm.
was playing up. So every time I moved my hand, it would flare up. But that was like an earlier version of it when obviously sort of my knowledge of all these things wasn't as expansive as it currently is. But yeah, literally last week I had well, it's not even numbness. It's a case of my shoulder just didn't feel right. And because it didn't feel right, it's like, well, it's not dislocated because obviously being medically trained, I can work these things out. But when I had a look at it, it was like I couldn't lift anything. So like anything heavy, like when you can just lift it straight above your head, it's like my arm would just like fall down. So historically, it had been the um, what is it? I can't think what the muscle is around the
I had
back.
this about 10 years ago. I couldn't lift my arm, which is why I started doing all the marathons and everything.
Yeah. What is it? I can't think
And
what the
I've got
muscle is around the
plantar
back.
fasciitis as well in my foot.
Mm. But literally, it was a case of the sort of the arm just wouldn't function
Mm.
how you'd expect the arm to function. And whereas I had basic movement of it, the like general day-to-day stuff was fine, but it would be as though it was like forward rotated
Hmm.
in the shoulder socket. But what that then meant is that obviously there was weakness in the arm, and that weakness then meant that obviously I couldn't lift anything. So it was then a case of sort of sitting down and sort of working it out. It's like, well, it's a recurring thing, but it doesn't make logical sense to be in this lifetime because it's not like I'd had a trauma and it's not like anything had sort of caused any damage to it. And I started exploring sort of, well, hold on. It feels like obviously my arm was chopped off. So if I was to describe it to you, that's how I describe it. It's like if you were to cut my arm off at like this part of the shoulder here down,
Hmm.
then it that's what it feels like. But obviously in that language term, obviously it can't be this lifetime because obviously I physically have my hand. So that's then what opens up the whole like past life memory type thing
Hmm.
because your feeling of it is linked to a past life event because it's obviously not linked to a current life event. So when I then explored that further, it was a case of I was hung upside down and I'd had my right arm chopped. So similar to like a piece of meat, if you're gonna like
Hmm.
let it bleed out in like a an abattoir, it's that type of thing. So obviously in past lives I was experimented on and I've had my right side chopped or cut open.
But can you
And then
remember that? Can you?
so it's one of those that you'd have to go through and feel it in this lifetime, because in the past lifetime you have the trauma, which is the unprocessed event. So in this lifetime, I haven't had it chopped off, but I've had to go through all of that pain as to what would be
Mhm.
associated with it from the past life because it's still stored in the cellular memory.
So it wouldn't be psychological pain from this lifetime.
Correct.
The psychological, goes to physical pain. We know that it
Yeah.
transfers.
So the pain itself is just a guidance system to some
Yeah.
unresolved event. So you will have a trauma, but it could be past lifetime, it could be this lifetime, it could be like literally current. But if you don't process the event,
Hmm.
it becomes a trauma. That trauma then gets stored in the body, and then the body at some point later on has to release it.
But if
So
you had
this,
trauma, have you had trauma? So could it be trauma from this lifetime going into your arm?
no, no. So this lifetime, I've had no experiences of sort of right-sided trauma,
But
but
psychological trauma that could maybe show up in your arm.
it wouldn't,
I mean,
no. So usually the only way it would do that is if there was a hidden message for some specific aspect of like the masculine or
right.
the overgiving side of things. But these are more metaphysical
Okay.
and metaphorical aspects rather than like the physical, tangible aspects.
Yeah.
But usually when there's no direct answer as to why you're experiencing something,
Hmm.
it's because your body's trying or is able to release something that you haven't yet processed from prior.
Hmm.
So what that then is when I talk about it in that way, of like it feels like my right arm has been cut off, and it hasn't been. It can't be this lifetime. It has to be past lifetime.
Hmm.
Unless, of course, I've had an experience whereby my right arm has been cut off, in which case it's obviously this lifetime.
Hmm.
But what we're then doing is we're then having the body go back and clear all of that karma or
Hmm.
that cause and effect from previous, because the body has it still circulating in your energy field. And if it's circulating in your energy field, then it has to be released at some point. So you get the pain, which is the guidance to then sit with it and process it. And then when you're sitting with it and processing it, what you're then able to do is release the stuck or the stored energy that's in the cellular memory. And therefore, it shouldn't then be creating or distorting your energy field. And therefore, it should affect your alignment from a positive, because obviously you're no longer carrying around that baggage or that sort of lesson. But you then have to remember, like, these physical things from past lives are probably the result of emotional or mental constructs that were present in past lives. So you might find that, like, if you were born into royalty, you would have been, you know, chopped into bits because of your value as a member of royalty or something, because of the persecution complex. And it's all these little weird things, or like the witch sagas and things along those lines, where people got punished and torn to shreds and hung, drawn, and quartered, and all of this lot.
Yeah.
And you might find that people are experiencing that at the minute, but you go to a doctor and it's like, oh, you've just got this problem with, I don't know, the sort of the elbow or the tendon or the whatever it is, because they can't explain all of this other stuff that's going on in the background, and you yourself have no sort of full awareness of exactly where it stems from. But then
Yeah.
they put you on
When I
tablets and all this
was
other stuff.
traveling years ago, like 30 years ago, we went to, I think it was Bali, or I think it was Krabi actually, in Thailand. There was a witch doctor in a little
Oh
hut.
yeah, yeah,
So they have all their potions or whatever, all natural stuff.
yeah.
Um, are they kind of into all of this past life stuff do you think, as well?
Most of the stuff, if you're doing that type of stuff in this lifetime, it's either
Mm.
ancient knowledge that's passed down, it's
Mm.
tribal, in which case it's just stuff that works for them, or
Mm.
it's you having a connection to something that you did in a past life. So therefore, what you're doing is in this lifetime, you're basically following the same kind of structure of what you did previously. But
Right.
obviously, in like modern day times,
Mhm.
it's a lot easier to get past all of this like magic and this spiritual stuff, and this energy healing because we have modalities that people recognize now. Whereas obviously in the past, it would have been something that, like, oh, well, it's mystical or it's out there or it's esoteric and we don't understand how it works properly. So we have to make it negative.
But it
So we
still
have
goes on,
a
doesn't it?
switch of time.
In like
Yeah.
this little native
Yeah.
kind of.
But there's a reason why these things get passed down. It's like, well, the more domesticated side of things is like, I don't know, your nan's recipe for making beef stew. It's like
Yeah,
technically
because it's not
that's just it's
mainstream.
just
Big
no,
pharma trying
but
to make
but
money.
it's like yeah, but you're passing it down from generation to generation. But it's something that's pre-existed before, but obviously it doesn't necessarily, obviously being food in that example, it doesn't have the same connotations as potions or herbal medicines or whatever you want to
Which is
sort
probably
of
more effective.
refer to it as. Yeah. So we're more open or accepting of it now, but it still has the same roots and the foundations from how it did sort of years and years and years ago. It's just the understanding of it now is more
People have cottoned on now, haven't they, really?
acceptable. Yeah,
Seem to.
but we've still got a long way to go
Yeah.
because the modern day health system just it doesn't cut it. But when you're after money rather than actual curing people, then what can you say?
I think COVID kind of woke a lot of people up, didn't it? Did you have the COVID jab?
I did, but it's
Oh,
because I had to travel.
all right.
So it was one of those. But my understanding of it is it doesn't matter what you put into the body, your body will filter it.
You think?
So
Mm.
it's a case of you can put whatever you want into the body. You
It's
have to
particularly
then have
nasty what they put in, though, spike protein.
yeah, but you then have to have faith that your body knows how to filter things that shouldn't be in it. Plus, you've got to do enough healing work to allow your body to then filter these things.
I mean,
So if you're
I didn't take any of them, but
no,
I had, had jabs before that,
hmm,
but I wouldn't now. My
yeah,
children had all the jabs,
I'm
but
I yeah I wouldn't I wouldn't knowingly go and do it now to anybody. But the problem you have is when you have to travel and when you have to go around and you then can't get into all these other places because of these enforcements, then it's like there's only so much you can do, and at that point, you have to trust that your body will filter it accordingly.
Mhm.
Because the biggest resource that we have, and the most powerful resource that we have, is the intelligence that is the human body. So therefore, as long as you're not sort of stressed and controlled
Mhm.
and down and depressed and everything else, your immune system and your body should be firing enough to clear all of this stuff out, which sadly isn't the case for
Mhm.
a lot of people because they're literally in those conditions whereby they then can't filter these things out. But you could also argue that COVID itself was a window of opportunity for people that didn't want to have any more of an experience to technically leave the system.
Mhm.
And that was just their method of choice as to how you then sort of decide to leave and come back then as a different character or as a different sort of avatar or have different experiences because
Mhm.
you transition just through that means. So there's a lot more that you can do with it other than just this is what this is.
Mhm.
But as we know with things, it's like experiments are sort of rife with the social aspects. So how much of it is a social experiment? How much of it is just are
Yeah.
people going to follow? And how much of it is just testing are people still under instruction and under order or taking authority from people still because they fear for whatever it is because they're in that lack, that scarcity mindset, and therefore they have to rely on somebody else because they haven't done the healing work or they haven't done the development work in order to go, well, hold on, something big is going on here that we need to be aware of. But then this is why everybody's waking up, or more people so are waking up because the consciousness is bringing the awareness to all of this stuff that isn't quite right, that then needs to be changed.
Mhm.
Fun and games.
Yeah. So my list was what else do we have to talk about? 11/11, severed arm.
Yep.
Um, what else do you want to talk about?
don't know. I've
How
covered
long have you
quite a
been?
bit in terms of like mental health and stuff,
Uh,
which that would be my current topic because it's a real bugbear of mine. And then you've got
mhm,
a whole other ball game, which we'll probably do next time because it's quite expansive. But it's
mhm,
projections, reflections, people with conditioning and trauma, and then rebounding, and then how that whole structure of kind of sending and receiving from a language perspective comes in. But that'd be quite an interesting topic to talk about. But it's quite a big one, so it's
do
probably not
that.
one
Should we
for
do that
now.
one next time?
We shall do that one next time. I think that's quite an interesting one
Okay.
because it more so goes into me teaching more of my concepts and theories rather than
Yeah.
anything else. But it's then layering stuff, which I think will be beneficial for listeners or viewers.
Hmm.
Depends on which platform they are watching or listening from.
Hmm.
But if nothing else, it exposes them to something, and then they can do what they want with it.
So at 11:11 tomorrow,
Yeah.
on the 11th of the 11th, what will you do at 11:11?
I don't generally pay much attention to
Okay.
it because I've found historically when I come up to a certain portal window, and to be fair, I get most of them. My stuff happens the week before,
Okay.
so
That's why you'll be on then.
it's kind of like a precursor or a sort of front runner type concept. So I
Mm.
get it the week before, and then people that get it the week after, I can kind of go, oh yeah, I know what that is, rather than it being at the same time as everybody else and everybody not knowing anything about anything. So usually I get stuff and I'm like, oh, well, hold on, I'm experiencing this type of thing. So in a week's time, be aware if you get like headaches or if you
Oh,
get
really?
sort of pain or if you have like certain elements that come up, or like if I have dreams or if I have visuals or if I have sort of
Visuals as
thoughts
in
that go
just
through
like
my head.
pictures coming into your head.
Yeah. So obviously that's more so past life,
Mm.
because there will be lessons that filter out the system. But yeah, usually if it's thoughts and visuals, then it's a case of you get an idea as to what the lesson or structure of lessons is,
Hmm.
as to what people may or may not then be walking into. But you have to remember these things are like universal. So you might have it in November and somebody else have it in, I don't know, February. So it can be specific to a certain type of person or a set of people with certain sort of criteria, like certain numbers in their numerology or certain life paths or certain sort of cycles that they're experiencing or certain age ranges or generations. But predominantly, you'll find that at some point, most people will go through the same type of cycle because they're clearing the same type of trauma or they're clearing sort of generational or bloodline or lineage stuff that then has a way of playing out at certain periods of time because you have to then obviously be in a position to then move forward and then go and do other things that ultimately don't end, or so I found they don't end. So once you deal with
But
one thing, the next
it's
thing
a
then
good
steps
thing,
in.
is it? It's not going to be any evil stuff happening.
No, like I said earlier, the body wants to heal. The body keeps the score. So the
Mm.
body has to do one thing, find a safe space or find a period in time whereby the energy is like calming or soothing or settling for you to then have this stuff come to the forefront of your awareness for the clearing. So
What about
it's
Satanists, though? What about nasty?
Well, if you're experiencing that type of thing, then you're
Mhm.
looking for that type of thing.
Uh,
But we have to remember that that could be just your logical way of being able to understand things by categorizing it as such. But yet, if you strip all of the labeling away, the lesson is still the same.
I mean, what I mean is like sacrificing babies and
Yeah,
vampires
so that's
and all
yeah,
of that.
that's the extreme side of it. But
These
if you have a
people
look at
exist
but if you have a look at like well, you've got to think they're creating negative karma somewhere.
and they're hiding in
So
the church and
so it will come back to bite them. but we're looking at like you can have sacrifice in terms of self-sabotage, right? So these are just like
No, I mean
tiny
real
aspects.
life baby sacrificing.
So if they're not existing in your reality, then
Yeah,
technically
they are.
they technically don't
Do you
exist
not believe in it?
unless you're looking for them, they don't
No.
technically exist.
Oh God. Okay.
Because
That's a
because if
whole
you're
another rabbit hole you haven't been down then.
no, what I mean is if you're saying that this is a topic for you, then
This
clearly
is
it's part of
ubiquitous.
your
It's bigger than Christianity. There's Satanists everywhere, killing babies and
right. But that's then part
they're
of
doing the
your
wars and
experience for some
no,
reason.
these are the
Because what usually happens, no, I get the fact it probably exists, but I'm talking from like my day-to-day perspective.
yeah.
It's not something that one I think about or two that pops up into my day-to-day experience.
I was thinking about it.
So I'm aware that yes, it's likely that it exists, but I'm not tracking it. I'm not following it. It's not part of my sort of conscious day-to-day routines. I'm not coming across it anywhere.
What about all the
So
wars?
what
What
then
about all these
happens?
people dying?
Yeah. So it's the same thing. I don't sit and watch the news.
No, I don't, but
So
it's
if
still happening.
unless I'm told it by somebody, but is it unless you're told that it's happening? That's
Ah,
the question. Because if
yeah.
you don't pay attention to these things, technically they don't exist. So what you have to then do is have a
But
look at
that's
why
all a
they're part of
simulation
your
as well, do you
experience,
think?
why you're exposed to them. Yeah, because like if I was to look at it on my day to day, like I don't watch the news, so if there are wars going on, they're not going on in my reality,
So it could all
but
be
they're going
bullshit.
on in somebody else's reality.
Mm.
But then you have to think if you're raising your consciousness, you're not going to have all these battles, fights, wars, negative energies in your environment or your experience because you're not
That's just a
calibrated to it
massive
from a
money
frequency
laundering,
perspective.
sending money
Yeah,
to the wars that don't exist.
yeah, but that's an economic problem.
Yeah, yeah.
But once again, if you're not into economics, then it doesn't become part of your day to day.
Wow.
So what you have is you have a certain number of people that are creating these things from their consciousness, but then their consciousness must be at a lower level in order to experience those types of things. Because once you start raising your vibration, your consciousness, your awareness, you're not creating negativity, you're creating positivity.
So
So
paedophilia
therefore,
and
yeah,
and all that that's going on is might not be going on either then.
no, it's going on for
And
certain
healing all
people, is
the
what we're saying.
trafficking, all these children and
No, what we're saying is it's going on for certain people
mm,
because they're consciously at that bandwidth or that frequency whereby they're having to have those experiences for whatever their lessons and their growth and their learning is. And as ugly as it sounds, that's all that's basically going on. But once you get beyond a certain point, you're not going to be experiencing those things because you don't filter them into your reality. And everybody's perception of reality is different based on their experiences, based on their frequency, and based on what they're attracting for their own growth and their own lessons. And that's where you can have two people in the same room, but they're not necessarily looking at the same scenario because we have all these filters that come across it. So unless you're literally attracting it for a certain reason, you're not going to be exposed to it and you're not going to experience it. Therefore, technically for you, it doesn't exist. And that's the weird concept of you can have these different things playing out in different points, but they're not subject to everybody because of what you're attracting and what you're exposing yourself to. Because the moment you cut the news out, that's half of the negativity gone. Then the more you're focusing on yourself rather than other people, you then lose sight of everything else that's going around because all you're doing is you're focusing more on self and creating the life that you want to live. But then you're not going to be creating all those negative aspects because you don't want to live those aspects. So you're not going to then have those aspects shown to you because they're not going to be vital for your experience and your growth and your development. and therefore you're not creating them, and therefore you're not putting into that consciousness. And then you've got to think if a lot of people do that, once it gets to a certain point, those things probably won't exist because nobody's contributing to their creation in the first place. But we're quite a way away from that.
The Gaza and Sudan and, you
Yeah.
know, all the death and destruction and demolition of the whole place.
Mm.
Are you saying that that's just because that's on the TV and we haven't seen it, it's possibly not
Well,
happened?
unless you physically go there and you experience it, does it really exist? That's what you have to ask
That's
yourself,
it.
because you're not contributing to it if you don't see it and you're not aware of it. But
But people are
people
pushing
in
that narrative
Gaza,
because they see it and then they forward it, don't they, on the
but it
social
but it's
media.
that yeah, it's the fear
They're
response again.
fueling it.
If there's wars breaking out, then what are you going to do? You're going to be worried, you're going to be concerned, you're going to be looking for some reassurance of some kind, right? But if you're not looking at those experiences, you're not in a state of lack, you're not in a state of scarcity, you're not looking to be controlled, you're not looking for an authority to save you because you don't see that there's a problem because you're not in a problem. And that's where the distinguishing factor is because the people in Gaza have a problem, but they're also contributing to the problem from a consciousness perspective, which is why they're having the experience to begin with because the way they think, act, and feel is what's creating the reality around them.
But do you think it's
And part
actually
of
as
it,
bad
yes,
as
you have to
we
argue
see?
it's, well, the news can make things as good as they want or as bad as they want. Ultimately, you could just describe it as a neutral event. There are two factions that just don't agree with each other and they decided that they're going to throw bombs at each other. Like, there's
And
no
they're killing all
weight.
the children. I mean,
Right, but they're right, so they're killing people.
don't
There's no
kill the
weight
children, no.
to it. But there's no weight to it unless we add to the story, which is why, like, what we experience is determined by our story, not the actual set of events or the chain of events that we actually experience. Because we never tell it as I showed up and this happened and that happened and then this did this and that did that. What we do is we go, oh, I showed up and then it got really bad and then this happened and that came crashing down. And then we add all of these effects to make it something more than what it is. And then what that does is that creates a dissonance between the actual event and what we actually experienced.
Mhm.
And then the problem is that's then the story that we tell, which then becomes part of the consciousness. And that's how we think, act, and feel. And then we create more of that, which then creates our reality.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're looking to feed ourselves and feed the brain from a mental construct, things that are beneficial and healthy, not things that are designed for control and authority. Because then what we're going to do is we're going to create more of that positive stuff rather than all of this negativity that we don't want to be experiencing and that we don't need to be experiencing as a collective, which is then the global aspect. But for everybody, like starting out, if you haven't done any healing work, you're going to be focused on other people because you haven't worked out yet that the cycle isn't what they're doing to you, it's what you've had done to you that you're now doing that you have to reconcile. So what we're doing is we're looking to change what we're feeding our mind so that we can consciously create rather than subconsciously repeat
Well,
what's always
it's
gone
like
on
a
before.
real life visceral feeling, isn't it,
Yeah.
when you see all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we're not taking anything away from the fact that these things do exist,
Mm.
but they only exist for certain people that are still needing to experience them or still consciously creating towards them. And some of it's circumstantial. It's like you can be born into a place whereby nobody's actually healed these wounds. Therefore, you still have somebody that believes they own some land and that then, hold on, they go looking for it and then it becomes a bit rough and then somebody starts bombing somebody else and somebody kills somebody else because of the bombing and then it spirals because they haven't healed all of that like trauma. But you as your experience could want to come in because maybe you started it in a past lifetime and now you're coming back to experience the other side of it, or you're coming back in to go, well, hold on, no, somebody needs to stop it because I wanted to stop it, but I didn't stop it previously.
Mm.
And now you're coming back in to reconcile it. But then that's just a group dynamic that then is working on a collective cause. But ultimately, you're just creating this rough and tumble experience that isn't ideal for anybody until somebody goes, enough is enough, and hold on, we're not doing this anymore. But that has to go through the process, and that's the evolution of the consciousness in that region or that area or that subsection of society that then has to go, no, we need to start doing something different. But until that happens, we're going to have these wars. We're going to have all of these other disconnects. We're going to be played off against one each other, one another.
Mhm.
But the whole point is we're coming
They're
together
clearing the
to
land then for a smart
reconcile.
city, I think, aren't they, or something?
Yeah,
They did in LA.
but then it's all these motives that need to be sort of played out in order to go, well, hold on, what do we actually want to be doing? But you yourself could be exposed to it, could be aware of it, could be notified of it, could be told it's happening, but yet you could be nowhere near the experience, or you could never even know it happened in the first place because you're not at that frequency or you're not exposed to whatever that vibration of society is. And this is where all of the like the bog standard ways of understanding things go out the window because you don't look at it from these angles. And not everybody is also contributing to the same scenarios and situations, which is why we all have different perspectives and different scenarios that we're then exposed to in order to then go, well, hold on, let's find out more about who we are and why we're doing certain things a certain way and whether or not we can do better. And then you can go back to Lemuria or Atlantis. It's like all these societies that destroyed themselves. Have we learned? Are we
You
going to
know,
do
a lot of
things
people
better this
don't even
time?
believe in the spirit.
Yeah,
No, my husband doesn't even believe in it. He has a spirit. It's like,
right.
you know,
But
people
that's the
people
level of
just kind of they
awareness.
just live and they're not aware of any of this stuff. They're
Yeah. But that's the
completely
level of
oblivious.
awareness and consciousness that they're
Yeah.
currently exposing themselves to because they have to either get exposure to it or they have to learn through whatever their experiences are that things are not necessarily as they expect things to be. Or he
Mm.
might just be here to never find out in the first place unless somebody exposes himself to it. And that also is fine because that's the experience you've come in to experience. Some people could come in and have a holiday. Some people could come in and be, I don't know, blessed with money. Some people could come in and go, hold on, I need it really difficult this lifetime. So therefore, start me off at the lowest of the low, and then I'll try and build myself up and work myself up to some past life status or stature that they once had that they lost because they didn't value it back then, but now they have to learn the value of what it actually is and then rebuild it, but from a solid foundation. But we're always looking at, well, we've got this one lifetime and what's happened in this lifetime is all there is.
Hmm.
But the bigger picture suggests otherwise. And then we have to look at it from that mindset. And then we have to change the mindset regularly. It's like, do we play victim for the rest of our lives, or do we play victor, or do we go on and sort of thrive rather than striving and struggling? And then what does that look like? Because all these things are designed to build character.
Hmm.
If you had a computer game and you went, oh, just press A to jump, how bored would you get very quickly? All I can do is just sit here and jump.
I mean, I
Just press this
remember,
button.
this is going to sound bizarre, but I remember before I was born, I remember being like consciousness and
Mm.
just being kind of light
Yeah,
before I was born and just kind of like choosing and
yeah.
just being
But that,
really, but just like happy and just kind of content and just consciousness in air without
yeah, but
anybody.
ultimately that's what you're looking to go away from because it doesn't give you any context. It's like you don't know how valuable that is and that sense of freedom is
Mhm.
unless you've got all the conditioning that they throw on top of it that makes it feel heavy and makes it feel dense. Then you're going, well, hold on, how do I go back to that feeling? Because that's the freedom I want. That's the creation that I want. That's the sort of life I want to live. That's alignment for me. But yet we come here to
It
experience the
was
heavy
just
and the dense.
consciousness. It was like
Yeah,
before being born, it was just in
yeah,
white, kind of,
hmm,
light.
yeah. But then you come
Unless
here
I
to
was
have the
stripping
experience,
once, and
which
I
is all the
remember it from
dense.
that. I've always
Well,
remembered that.
Yeah, but it's the same thing, whether you do it that way or the other way. Like you the only reason you've come here is so that you can feel the heaviness, the
Right.
density, and you can clear it to try and get back to what you understand yourself to be. And that could be trauma, that could be physical ailments, that could be mental constructs, that could be emotional like attachments. And all you're looking to do is to go back to that lightness, which is why they call it enlightenment. Obviously, you're going more towards the light, but then you're lighter in terms of the heaviness and the baggage and all the crap that you're sort of carrying around with you. And that's all we're here to do. We're looking to go, well, hold on, how do we clear enough of all this stuff so we don't have to experience it again? But we also hold the lesson and the value from it that we can then take forward so that we don't have to then be exposed to it again or have the same experience again. But too many people aren't taking the lessons and the value and going, oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. I should do this differently. And then they repeat the same cycle. And then it's just a different face, but the same underlying person or the characteristics, the traits. And then it's still, well, hold on, you haven't learned this time. You're still doing the same thing. You're still going into the same scenarios and the same situations. But that's because you have to have the exposure and the repetition in order to then retrain and then get away from it to begin with.
To get uncomfortable and then move on
Yeah.
and change
But
it.
the growth comes from discomfort, not
Yeah.
comfort. So unless you're pushing yourself, you're going to be in this nice little bubble and everything's all fine and dandy. And yet, what are you doing? You're just idling.
Yeah.
But
The
yet you can still be
adversity is
holding all the
actually good.
trauma. You can
Yeah.
still be holding all the problems. You've just acclimatized yourself to, well, hold on, this is okay and acceptable for me to operate in, even if it's not the best conditions for you to thrive.
Mhm.
And sadly, too many of us are in that comfort zone and we don't realize there's a way out of it because when we do get out of it, we're challenged with this discomfort and we don't like discomfort. So we go back to comfort because we've been wired wrong. And rather than going towards the pleasure and all the like abundance and all of the sort of
But it's not
magic
necessarily
that
comfort, it
is,
might be just familiar. So that's what your baseline is, wherever that
yeah,
is, whether it's
yeah.
comfort or
But familiar is interesting because it's usually created by family lies. Family
right.
liar,
Ah.
right? So usually anything that's familiar to you is usually going to be a lie or some sort of piece of rubbish that you're exposed to that you're expected to maintain that just doesn't work.
Hmm.
So that's the
That's
distinguishing factor between comfort and
yeah.
familiar.
Mm.
You can be comfortable in terms of you've acclimatized to something, but you can be familiar because you're exposed to something and it becomes normal. So they're two slightly different things.
Ah.
But this is why we say we have to have a look at it from different angles and perspectives. Otherwise, you can never understand what's truly going on. And if you can't understand what's truly going on, you can never really clear anything because you don't know why it's there or what it's doing or what its function is in the first place. And that's the hardest part because usually, if you look at it from a mental construct, you've got the yes, I'm right because I have to make sure that I'm right. This is what happens if it's wrong. Then I've got a hybrid of if I'm found out to be neither of those two things work, I can give this answer. And then there's usually a fourth thing if you're kind of building the structure complex wise, that then means if all of those three fail, you've still got a fail safe. But if you can't get to each of those four things, then you're stuck in the loop or the pattern because you haven't understood the why. And therefore, you haven't been able to construct it correctly to then challenge the why in the first place. So, yeah, the human mind is a fascinating thing,
Yes, it
but
is.
as good as it
Very
is, it's
complex.
also a nightmare until you work out what it's doing, in which case it then becomes relatively easy.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well, I think we should end it there and then see you next
yep,
week again, or the week
yep,
after, or whenever's convenient.
yep.
Uh,
Sounds good.
cool. Um, that was good, wasn't it? Do you want
Yep.
to say where your stuff is again? And
Yeah. So if you're interested in what it is that I do, if you actually want to start doing your own healing work, if you want to have a look and explore exactly what's going on for you in any way, shape, or form across any of your areas, you can follow me on Instagram. It's obviously Instagram, but or is it just / Chris Paprotny?
Mhm.
And then we've got TikTok, which is also at Chris Paprotny. And then we've got the YouTube channel, which is also at Chris Paprotny now, because I've changed that one over. Otherwise, you can go to www.physicalfinesse.com and you can book a session with me through there. But all my sessions are paid originally because we don't go through the usual structure of discovery call. We go straight into the action and we get to the root cause pretty much straight away. So by the end of that hour and a half, you should be a lot clearer as to what's going on, why it's going on, where it's going wrong, and then you should be primed to then kickstart your own journey. So I look forward to seeing you there.
You try and get more money out of them and do a whole book,
A book? Ah,
like a book of
no.
six.
Well, they can book
They
three
like to
months.
come back every week.
Well, they can book either a single well, they have to go
A
through the
single
single
session or
session
a weekly.
because that primes you. Because obviously
Yeah.
there'll be people that get to that point and they're like, oh my God, it's too much. But obviously you're still getting the value out of it. You
Mhm.
then go into a multi-session, which is like a 3 hour intensive,
Oh, wow.
whereby, and to be fair, it can take me anything from 20 minutes to an hour to literally map everything. So we're not talking like huge amounts of stuff. But I say that as if it's normal,
You
you
should
see.
offer a weekly thing. You should offer
Yeah.
a weekly thing. That is,
So so that's a 3 hour session, but we can get a lot done in that time, or you can come work with me for 3 months, which is an extended period of time, but then it means we can work on multiple levels and we can work across multiple kind of scenarios that come up. Because obviously life will throw things at you based on the identity that you declare, and we'll test that continuously. So as you're
good
shifting and
concept.
progressing and moving through, then that's also an option.
Cool. All right,
Indeed.
nice one. That was number
Yep.
four.
Yep. Number four.
Oh, I haven't been
Question is,
to the ultimate launch for a few weeks, actually. I might go tomorrow.
what do you mean by
I
ultimate?
didn't, to the
Oh,
ultimate launch on tomorrow night. I didn't go. I haven't been for weeks. Might go tomorrow.
oh yeah. Oh, you mean the business one?
Yeah, yeah. The business
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
I
yeah.
might see you tomorrow there. So I should really go.
Well, I didn't. Well, I obviously
Did you
didn't
not
go
go last
last
week?
week. Well, my arm was playing up.
Oh, was it?
I, I'd rather lay down rather than sit there. But
Oh, you had your screen off.
yeah,
Oh,
I
right.
might.
Okay.
I might be there. It depends. I need to get to the point where I need some advice on something. But at the minute, I'm
Yeah.
trying to do like
I'm
logos
doing the
and cover
stack. I
images
haven't
and
started it yet.
things. I haven't done the tech stack
Oh,
yet,
have you not?
but no, I'm currently doing all of my social media imagery. So like LinkedIn, cover photo.
Oh,
Um, Problem is I've got TikTok and YouTube that I also have to do, but there's no guidance from them on either of those two. So I'm kind of having to wing those bits. But then my next thing is adding people or adding groups on Facebook.
hmm.
Then once I've done that, it's a case of if I come across a stumbling block, I might go to the business thing.
Yeah.
If not, then I'm kind of just plugging away and just going through the content. So might be there, might not.
All right. If not, I'll see you next week,
Yep,
next Monday.
indeed. All right, catch you later
Cool.
then.
All right. Catch
All
you
right,
later. Bye.
thanks. Bye.
Bye.